Round 5 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship is this weekend in Valencia. In fact, it's round 5 and 6 that will be taking place at the DHL Valencia E-Prix. A very good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. It's just gone past 9:10 local time here in Spain, but we were all here a lot earlier, I can promise you that. About 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning, drivers started arriving. Lucas de Grassi and who's that? Norman Nato. It was so dark I can't even tell who the drivers are. And there's the two Dragon Penske Autosport drivers. A nice banana to start the morning for Nico Muller and Nick Cassidy and Robin Freins. Good friends as ever at the Envision Virgin Racing team. Jean-Eric Verne ready to go, looking for his second point scoring finish of the season. And René Rast up for the fight this afternoon. So, this is how the championship stands coming into round 5. Sam Bird leads the way. He's P1 at the moment, 4 points clear of Mitch Evans in second place. Robin Freins is third in the standings. The top 7 drivers separated by just 13 points. Jean-Eric Verne, with that one win in the first race in Rome, has 25 points in 8th place. But we've got a long, long way to go this season still. 2 drivers yet to score points so far this season, Jake Dennis and Andre Lotterer. They will be hoping to get off the mark over the next 2 races. As far as the teams are concerned, as you would imagine, with Jaguar leading the way in the drivers, they are also leading the way in the teams. 82 points, well clear of Mercedes EQ. And down at the bottom, you've got BMW I Andretti Motorsport propping up the championship standings, still waiting for one of their drivers, Jake Dennis, to get off the mark. They're just behind Neo 333, but Jaguar looking very strong up at the top. And as for the circuit in Valencia, this is a look at the run down towards the start-finish straight and the run into turn 1, a very fast left-hander. Track limits will be monitored on the exit, which could be a real tricky moment in qualifying. And then we come on the run up towards turn 2, a tight left-hander there. Drivers are saying they might be overtaking at every corner here, such is the need for energy management. Then there's a tight left-hander at turn 6, then a long run down towards turn 8. On the outside of turn 8 is attack mode. A sharp right-hander takes you to the cut-through at 9 and 10. Then the final corner at turn 12 is followed by a little chicane at 13, 14 and 15 and out across the line. So this second free practice session will be the last 30 minutes for the drivers and the teams to get ready ahead of qualifying coming up this afternoon. It's got a little bit warmer out there, only 1 degree warmer, 13 degrees the air temperature. A few spits of rain when we were down in the pit lane a few moments ago. My name is Jack Nichols. I'm joined in commentary by Karun Chandok and Nikki Shields. And yeah, it's a bit chilly out there, Nikki. You got a nice big coat on.
I do. I've got my very thick, it's more like a duvet than a coat. It's about 13 degrees down there at the moment in the pit lane. We've been doing our weather checks throughout the day. The vibe at the moment is that it's just going to stay a bit damp. Hopefully not going to be a wet race, but now that I've said that, clearly it's going to be. But it is a bit chilly. Yeah, how that's going to affect the tyres will be interesting to see in this session.
Sam Bird, championship leader, getting ready to go out on track. Very clear visor.
Well, it needs to be. It's cloudy out there, Jack.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think we're going to see much sunshine. That's certainly the forecast for today and tomorrow. It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because it was baking hot yesterday when we were sitting outside in the sun.
So on the back of, I had a quick chat with Sam Bird when he came in, and he said he was really struggling with his front tyres. The front tyres just didn't have any grip. He wasn't too happy. Obviously, I think he finished in P15 in that first session.
Yeah, well, both of the Jaguars actually were quite a long way down the order, 0.8 of a second and a second off the pace respectively. It was Antonio Felix da Costa who was at the top of the times this morning, the reigning champion. Norman Nato ended the session 19th quickest, the Frenchman from Cannes. But the pit lane is about to open and everybody, as you would usually imagine, will charge out onto the racetrack when the track opens, and they go straight out onto the circuit. So interesting to see what run plans we see in this second practice session.
Down in the pit lane, I'm just going to say one thing, the word frantic. After that session, they were very busy. I think, you know, again, this is such a different circuit to what we're used to racing on, and a lot of the teams really got the setup actually quite wrong in that first session of the day. So they've made a lot of changes, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see the difference in the times over the course of this session. And Felix da Costa, even though he was top of the timings, he still wasn't that happy with the performance of the car, said it had a lot of understeer.
Which is slightly confusing, considering they've done so much testing around here. You know, you'd have thought this is the circuit that the cars are most dialed into, but I think the reality is that it's much cooler now than than they were perhaps expecting. I think also what happens is when they come here for pre-season testing, they don't necessarily focus on the chassis setup. What they do focus on is working on the efficiency and the motor and the recovery of energy and things like that. And because they realize most of the championship is actually around the street circuit, so the setup here isn't necessarily representative. Now we're back here racing. They're having to work on dialing the cars in. So I think it has maybe caught a few people off guard.
There's a look at the loop at left at turn 8, and then this little cut through at 9 and 10.
Both Nissans are going for 235 now.
Okay, copy that. That's fine.
Nick de Vries saying both Nissans are going for 235 now. Presumably they're trying to work out where they want to be on track and what space they want in front of them, because Van Dorn getting right up to the back of the second Nissan in that queue. That's something that caught Mercedes out actually in free practice in Rome. They struggled to get the space on track that they wanted in free practice and caught the session a bit of a mess really, but it all looked a little bit neater this time around. Here's Jean-Eric Verne, the two Diesta cheaters straight out together again.
Yeah, I mean the animals have come out 2 by 2 again, haven't they? In terms of the drivers trying to practice the slipstream effect for the race, and we saw some of this in the first free practice session. There is going to be a benefit from it. I can see 4 drivers, Jack, I think on attack mode. Lotre. Oh, he's got back in the pits, but yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them, I think, who had a go straight away.
Jean-Eric Verne is going to use the fan boost here, I think, because he comes down the back straight to test that. They're going to be testing that at some point in the early stages, because he is up in the mix of getting the fan boost as he comes through that long left-hander of 8 and then into the tight right at 9. And some of these, I'm interested to see some of these apexes. It's just the barrier there. There's no curb to kind of give you that little bit of margin for error.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the street circuit, actually, that's the case, though, isn't it? Quite often they're up against walls. So actually, they're trying to make some of these corners, like here at the chicane, as you mentioned, there's no curb. That they're trying to make it similar to a street circuit, which is not a bad thing, really.
I think the other thing, chatting to Sylvain Filippi at Envision Virgin, he was saying that just generally, there's obviously, they've got to have the mechanical setup quite differently at this track, but they just don't have the experience. They haven't put the time and energy into actually understanding what the right setup is for a track where you've got these long, fast corners with such a different entry point. You really need stability. You've got to carry the pace into those turns, whereas in Formula E, we're used to really sort of slow, 90-degree corners. So I think that's the other thing that they're struggling with at the moment.
Well, typically when you'd come from a street circuit onto a permanent facility like this, you'd stiffen the car up because you haven't got the bumps, you haven't got the undulations. You can basically try and stabilize the platform and have less energy. Every time the car's rolling around and moving from left to right in terms of roll like you have in a road car, it's using up energy. So on a permanent track like this, they would stiffen it up. But it's a question of when you do that, how does that affect your balance around the rest of the car that you've dialed in? I think that's where we sometimes we're seeing, in fact, today's perhaps some discrepancies where we saw some horrendous understeer, didn't we, in the first session? People, especially up at the top, when they got to turn 8, De Grassi ran really wide on a couple of laps, and we have seen people struggling.
25 minutes left on the clock. Verne is the quickest driver at the moment for what it's worth, the 27.8, but the quickest lap times we saw earlier on was a 27.2, so still 0.6 of a second or so away. Van Dorn is in attack mode lap at the moment in the Mercedes EQ.
I tell you what's become more significant actually now is if you factor in the calendar, which has just been announced for the remaining races, between Valencia and the 2 rounds in Mexico, you've now actually got 4 races at a permanent facility, similar, which are actually sort of similar as well.
Yeah.
It's an infield stadium around an oval. So actually, it has. That's a big chunk of your season where you have to have a car that also works on a permanent track. And I think it's good. You know, I think championships that have this variety of circuits and give a variety of challenges to the teams and drivers, you know, are interesting.
Yeah.
And I think so. In the past, you know, when you weren't going to that race in Mexico, they could have said, well, okay, we won't focus so much on Valencia. We'll take this as damage limitation, and we lose some points. That's fine. We'll make sure the car works the others. They can't now, because that's actually 4 race events that you'd lose if you haven't got the car working.
And Monaco, albeit the most famous street circuit in the world, in Formula E terms,
It's
is
silky
flat
smooth.
as a pancake.
Yeah, but it's also very smooth now. You know, Monaco is no longer a bumpy street circuit. I mean, I drove there in the historic a few years ago, but obviously raced there 5 or 6 times in other categories, and it's so smooth. You know, it's not like a bumpy circuit that these guys would normally be used to.
And the exciting thing about Monaco, of course, is we're now doing the full track, which is going to be amazing to see, because obviously in previous years we've only really done the bit around the harbour, so sort of half the traditional circuit there.
God, I remember that first year when we went. It was a massive shunt.
Your
wasn't
race
it?
didn't last very long, did it?
No, I got
Were you in the shunt?
Bruno was in the shunt.
Oh,
not
it was
me.
Bruno over the back of Daniel
Over the back of Danny Lab and on his side. That was a massive shunt. Yeah, no, I spent most of that race staring the back of Iana Trulli's rear wing.
That many people have said that in the past, haven't they? I don't know. Do you know who comes up with these slogans? No Spain, no gain on the front of Pascal Wehrlein's Tagoya Porsche there. I love it. They had a great one. What was it? Pizza Pasta e Motore in Italy. It's great.
Probably someone that works in marketing at Porsche.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. No, I didn't know if you knew the name. And then I could go and say, well done to that person.
No, I don't, but I can scurry out there in between the break and I'll do your research for you.
No, come on. I'm not saying it like that. But here are the Jaguar drivers. Mitch Evans, who's just had his lap time cancelled for track limits at Turn 1. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen at Turn 1 in the qualifying session, because obviously drivers will say, oh, you know, you treat it like a wall when you run wide at the first corner, and you just don't, and that's fine. But it must be a different mindset to it being a wall, because you see drivers run wide there, where if it was a wall, they wouldn't hit it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I think the reality is, though, in qualifying, the most important thing is to get a lap on the board. You know, you can't, with such few opportunities to get yourself up the grid, even if you do make it into Super Pole, you can't afford to not do a lap.
Yeah,
that's you know, you're much better off sacrificing half a tenth by not running wide, and make sure you get a lap on the board. You know, you'd feel pretty silly, to be honest, if you've had your lap cancelled by running wide there, and your team will not be impressed, I suspect.
I'm excited to see how this relationship between the teammates at Jaguar, Mitch Evans and Sam Bird, is going to play out over the course of the season, because at the moment they're still being very friendly towards each other, playing ball, complimenting each other on their racecraft. But, you know, with only one trophy up for grabs, I wonder how long that's going to continue for.
Yeah, we get to see them really together on track, really. They kind of combined their way up the order in Rome a couple of times, but we haven't seen them absolutely rivaling it out. And there's only 4 points between them at the top of the championship. They're both out in Group 1. So watching that sort of new teammate relationship develop, I think will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, watching from home like I have been, seeing we're going to see Robin Freins have a little spin. This is up at Turn 2, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just no real harm there. Watching from home, you know, when you see the two Techeetah drivers, for example, bashing into each other, you know, as they seem to do on most weekends, is actually it's brilliant entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, and you do see that sort of boiling over at some point if they are, as Nicky said, chasing. You know, if they are the 2 championship contenders towards the end, you could see them almost hitting each other the final race, and that sort of stuff, you know.
Here's Max Gunter, who
I think he's on a 250.
Yeah, he just popped up as 250 down there, didn't he? As they come into the cut through at 9 and 10. We'll see when he gets on the power here if he's still at 250. No, he's at 235. So must have just been doing a fan boost test on that straight. As Gunter comes down to the final couple of corners. Very much looking forward to, as we go driver's eye, with Max Gunter now coming into the chicane.
Yeah, it's a great camera angle here. You can see where he, his eye line is going is so important. That's the big difference with driving on a racetrack.
You can keep pushing sector 1.
The big difference with driving on the racetrack as opposed to driving on the road is how much further ahead you need to look. And I think of it as you look one step ahead. When you're on the braking point, you're looking at your turn in. At your turn in, you're looking. Now he's looking already at the exit. So you try and get your brain to compute exactly where the car's going to go, and that gives you time, gives your brain and your reactions a bit of time to adjust. He's backed out of this lap now. See him making some changes on the steering wheel to I think go back into the lower power mode. So he's switched it down.
Go one, car balance a lot better.
So
Mainly.
a lot happy with the car balance, Max Gunter, as he pushed through the first sector. With 18 minutes left on the clock, it's still Van Dorn who's at the top of the times on a 27.4. Here's Alexander Sims in the Mahindra. He is down in 24th place, but Dilbag Gill saying that he got his qualifying sorted in Rome, and that was sort of the issue in the early parts of the season for Sims.
It was a tricky one in Rome, wasn't it? Because you had the damp, drying track conditions and things. So, it was, and I think some of it contributed to the fact that you had drivers out of position.
Yeah.
You had certain quick guys further down. So it's quite hard. But I think for Alex, it's a confidence booster.
Yeah.
Getting not just a result in qualifying, but also in the race, it would have done wonders for his confidence there.
He's an interesting. He never sort of exudes confidence, does he, Alexander Sims? And even if you ask him, "Are you a good racing driver?" he'll probably say no, and think it's a very funny thing to say, and it probably is a very funny thing to say. But there were times, especially at BMW the last couple of years, where he sort of really struggled, despite taking 3 pole positions in a row and winning races.
His reaction on the radio after his podium was lovely, because he said, "Oh God, I'm never emotional. I'm never normally emotional, but actually, I'm pretty emotional right now. I'm really excited." But it's brilliant to see. But obviously, today's race is not going to be about the outright pace. It's so much is about efficiency in this race. And I don't know whether Mahindra, have we seen the best efficiency out of their car so far? I'm not quite sure if they're going to do particularly well here at this track.
Nick Cassidy in the Envision Virgin racing car coming into the final chicane. But I think, it'll be interesting for Mahindra to see what happens. And also the attack mode strategy as well is one where some teams are playing it safe. Maybe they need to be more aggressive, and those kind of decisions that you make here.
It's going to be different here, certainly with attack mode, because I think the time loss is going to be less than certainly was at Rome.
Yeah.
Rome, you had it such a long way off the racing line. It was dusty and up against the wall. So actually the time lost on attack mode, while activating the attack mode, I should say, was quite significant. Here, it's not that wide. They're doing it up in turn 8. You don't have to go that far away from the racing line. So actually, your time loss isn't going to be massive. I mean, Jack, you and I were fortunate yesterday. The sporting director from the series took us around, and we had a look in a road car. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a loss. But also, the benefit here is going to be more, because you've got room to overtake and room to use the extra power, which you didn't necessarily have in Rome. So I actually think in Rome it's sort of balanced off, didn't it? The loss of time versus what you gain back at power was nearly a net zero offset. Whereas here, I think you'll get a net gain. The trouble will be the energy. But everyone's got to do it. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be really interesting. You're right. I think that it will be a sort of net gain here, and you will use it because it's so interesting how it varies from track to track, where sometimes you're using it as sort of a defense mechanism and trying to lose the least amount of time possible, and sometimes like this weekend you're using it as a real attack mode to try and gain time. It's really interesting how it changes from track to track as the two Venturis come down to turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, Eden Mortara currently in P15, but I think out of the 2 races he's actually finished this season so far, he's really impressed. And I know Susie Wolf was really happy with his performance, with a podium finish in the first race and then a P4 last time out.
I mean, he had the save of the season, didn't he, last time out? I have no idea how he didn't shunt into the wall and a couple of others. But it's very good.
He's had
and the amazing overtake as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
He's had an interesting career, Edoardo Mortara, in Formula E, because after 5 rounds in season 5, he was 2 points off the championship lead, and then he didn't score any more points that year and retired in 6 of the remaining 8 races. So he has shown the flashes of and leading, you know, in one of his first races in Hong Kong for the Venturi team before spinning out at the end, and then winning the 50th Formula E race in Hong Kong after Samber's penalty. But this season is just feeling a bit more consistent almost for Mortara, even though he had the DNS and couldn't get out for qualifying in Rome. Like you say, 2 strong races out of the 4.
So Van Dorn's gone to the top of the times with a 27.4. We're looking at Gunter. So there's a bit of a moment down at turn 4. Oh, actually quite a big moment.
Yeah.
Out in the gravel. It's a funny corner turn 4 because you go through this dip, and it's really important to get the nose of the car into that inside apex on the curb. You see there's an orange and white curb and then a green curb, and the drivers have got to aim for that green bit, because if you can get the front wheels around into that green bit, it just hooks the car around and you can carry a lot more speed. So it's quite it's not an easy corner actually. It's harder than it looks. And you see the Jaguar there going into it, you can see it drops downhill. It's actually a blue and white curve now on the inside, but yeah. It's got some nuances, this place. It looks flat, you know, in terms of a racetrack, because we're not in the hills and it's not big undulations. But it's got some subtle cambers in the road, and you've got to make sure that you're placing the car in the right place to make use of those cambers. Look at Evans's. It's interesting looking at Evans's power usage there. It was switching between 234 and 236 kilowatts, and that's something Jaguar will be looking at, because you can't have those spikes. You know, that's where you get in trouble with the FIA. So you've got to try and have some, just have it as even as possible, though.
I always find it amazing how much the racing driver actually still has to do with the steering wheel during the course of the race. I mean, does that just well, that's true. And that. But, you know, with changing the settings, how is it a distraction, or does it just come naturally?
I think when you switch teams initially, it's a bit different in Formula E, because obviously all the steering wheels are the same. I think the layout of the steering wheels are all the same. So at least all the switches are in the same place. It can be a bit distracting, but I think one of the challenges of Formula E is actually the mental challenge of doing that. You know, the physical challenge of driving these cars isn't as high as in some other categories. But I found, and I think a lot of drivers who come into Formula E have found, the mental challenge of, you know, making sure you're hitting the right engine modes, you're using the right amount of regen, the right settings, making sure you're doing the calculations right for the energy usage, and watching that target. It makes it a really, really big mental challenge. You know, you do come away from a race weekend with your brain quite fried, even though physically you feel fine. Yeah. You're mentally, you've done so much math across the day in terms of trying to get these right, you know, the right numbers.
Exhausting. Actually,
how much of it is how much of it is you doing calculations, or are you trying to work things out?
Mental math?
Yeah. Are you trying to work things out as well as the engineers?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to, right? Because you know, the radio goes down, for example, so you can't be completely blind. Yeah. You know, you have to have a vague. Obviously, you heavily rely on them to do it, but you do have to, you know, have your wits about you, I think, and keep an eye on it. And it helps you, doesn't it? I think ultimately it helps you as you're going around the lap, or as you're going around the race, I should say, you know, to just make sure that you're looking at the big picture and saying, okay, I can use a bit more now, but if I'm going to use, I don't know, 1.6 of energy, kilowatt hour of energy on this lap, then on the next lap, I need to do 1.5.
Yeah.
Because if my target's 1.55. So, you know, you've got to have your wits about you to at least go, okay, this lap I'm going to make an overtaking move, in which case I'll use a bit more energy, but then I've got to somehow get it back on the next lap. And so I think it is quite important, actually, to have your, you know.
And were you very much like a data-driven person? Because we saw René Rast earlier. Audi was saying that he is just so focused on the data. Like as soon as he comes in, data. He's always in between sessions. He's always got his laptop out. He's always looking at it. Quite different, they were saying, to the way that Lucas Grassi approaches it. Although he is also, you know, very engaged in what goes on at the end of a session. I think René Rast really puts the data first.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. You know, I like numbers in general. I always think that you have to use every tool in the box to try and be successful. And while, you know, I must admit, most of the time we weren't very successful. You know, I think you still have to give yourself the best opportunity. And therefore, looking at the data, looking at the numbers is massively important. However, ultimately, you have to think of the big picture, which is you are there to drive the car, and the engineers are there to actually look at, their job is to look at the data all the time.
Yeah.
Looking at the data and understanding it is a part of your job, but it's not all of your job. So there has to be a point where you need to have a word with yourself and say, right, you know what, that's enough. I'm going to go off and get my head in gear to drive the car, and let someone else worry about it. But I think that there's a balancing act there, you know. You do, and you have it in every category, right? You have drivers who decide to put in more effort in terms of understanding the data and looking at numbers, but we'll see. Anyway, enough of numbers. This is Gunter on his first. This is the first of the 250 kilowatt laps, aren't it?
He's 0.2 of a second up on Stoffel van Dorn in sector 1 with 8 minutes left on the clock. And now through the middle sector, he's almost 0.4 of a second up. So I think he'll be the first man to dip into the 1:26s here.
So Gunter, interestingly, this morning, Jack, was the fastest man in sector 1. He did a 29.37 in sector 1. So he's actually a little bit slower on this occasion.
Comes through the final chicane now and out across the line. And Gunter does a 1:26.958. Into the 26s. No one else on a full power run at the moment. Gunter's gone a little early. I would say 3/4, if not more, are in the pit lane at the moment.
Change of tyres here for Da Costa. So we saw this in the first practice session, wasn't it? We saw people, you know, swapping tyres around and trying different strategies on it. Say Porsche as well. Looks like Bearline's going for a different set. It'd be good to see a close-up and see if that's a new set of... So clearly they're all getting ready for this final hit. See the tread actually on that tyre that's just come off, the center band of it. There's certainly much more wear than you'd expect to see. If you look at, you know, those two bands, should we say, in the middle, the height of those relative to the bottom of the tyre, as we see it, is certainly less than you'd expect on a street track. So clearly showing the wear they've got here. We saw the marbles, didn't we?
Yeah.
Offline, which you mentioned before, you don't really see on the street track. So it is a thing, and I imagine on top of all the energy stuff that the engineers are having a look at this weekend, the tyre management and tyre usage is going to be quite a critical thing.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems that way, and having more options with the tyres than they would usually have. Here's Stoffel van Dorn, who I think is on a prep lap before a push lap. He's done his out lap. I think this will be his preparatory lap at 200 kilowatts of power, and then I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of moments he switches it to full power and gives it a real run. Stoffel van Dorn, as he looks to, he will hope, secure another pole position.
Yeah, he'll be going out in Group 1 today. It'll be interesting, obviously, we're talking about slipstreaming during the course of the race, but do you think we might actually see that within the quali groups as well? You know, obviously everyone wants to come out last in their group, but if you're not, are you going to then be trying to catch up with whoever's out in front of you?
I always think in quali you've got to do your own thing.
Yeah.
I really think so. I think because otherwise you know, yeah, you can gain something. Of course you can from the slipstream, but you're also reliant on the guy in front not making a mistake, not holding you up. You know, all it takes is that driver in front to have a spin, and you've lost your opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think, personally, you're better off doing your own thing. On a street circuit, we've seen it, haven't they, where they all wait to go to the end because they want the best track conditions. Here, they've got a bit more of a luxury now. They don't, I think the track evolution won't be so high. So we may not have that you know, last-minute rush. I think you might see people going out earlier.
So Stoffel Vandoorne and Nick de Vries both on full power laps. Vandoorne is 400ths down on Gunter in sector 1. Natto has actually done the fastest first sector in the Mercedes-powered Venturi. And de Vries is 300ths up on Gunter in the first sector. We're watching the Dutchman, who is lying 5th in the championship after retiring in both races in Rome, having arrived as the championship leader, still out in Group 1, still only 11 points away from championship leader Sam Bird. Natto is pretty much matching Gunter in the middle sector as well, as is de Vries. Natto goes up into second place then, loses a couple of tenths in the final sector compared to Gunter. Here comes de Vries through, well, Vandoorne, his teammate, looked a little bit loose there through 12. Now here comes de Vries into the final chicane. De Costa's done the fastest middle sector of anyone now. It's all very, very tight though. It's all less than a tenth of a second. Vandoorne, he also loses a couple of tenths compared to Gunter in the final sector. De Vries goes second, 300ths of a second away. Antonio Felix da Costa, meanwhile, has done the fastest middle sector of anyone. He's coming through the final chicane now and out across the line, gets on the power, a little bit of opposite lock, and da Costa goes into third position. This is going to be such a tight qualifying session. It's insane.
Gunter's lap is holding up though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know, he's had some heavy hitters come out and do a time on that run, and he's still sitting there at the top. Oh, Roland locked up going into the chicane, and that would have hurt his time. He was a little bit down anyway in the first couple of sectors, but I think, you know, you got Roland there into fourth. You got, you know, da Costa's time. He hasn't, if you look at how much the others have improved from their FB1, da Costa's not actually found a whole bunch, has he?
No, that's very true. De Vries second at the moment then. Roland goes into fourth position. It was a good first sector for Jake Dennis. Jean-Eric Verne locking up as he comes into the chicane at the end of the lap. He's about 3.5 tenths away from Gunter, actually, after the first two sectors, and only slots into 7th place, ahead of Sims and Lynn and Rast, but I think that might be the slowest we've seen of the 250 laps, actually, from Jean-Eric Verne. 4 tenths away from Gunter in the end. Dennis slots into 7th. This is on board with Lucas de Grassi now, coming out of 9 and 10, and then this sweeping left-hander that takes him into 12.
He's not had a great first couple of sectors. He's a good half second or so down already. Buemi at the moment also on a lap. He is also about 3 or 2.5 tenths down in the first two sectors. Here comes de Grassi out of the last chicane. Bit of oversteers. He tried to put the power down and come up across the line. 9th for him.
So that Max Gunter time still looking very good, isn't it? Here comes the Nissan of Sebastian Buemi. Out and cuts the timing beam. And Buemi goes up into 5th place. Fractionally slower than his teammate Oliver Rowland. So Nissan's in 4th and 5th and looking fairly pacey. But this is really good stuff from BMW, because they haven't actually looked like they've had much pace in that car all year. Gunter was all right in Rome, but nothing particularly spectacular.
Lautre has gone fastest of anybody in Sector 1, Jack.
Yeah, the Porsche. There's Mitch Evans in the Jaguar. Now they seem to struggle. Lynn and Rast have both done good first sectors too. Evans seemed to struggle for pace in the first practice session. We'll see what the New Zealander has this time as he comes down into turn 12. He's half a second away after 2 sectors.
Yeah, I was going to say his first 2 sectors aren't looking great. Sam Bird on a lap as well. He is a little bit quicker than Evans at the moment. He is a couple tenths quicker than Evans in the first 2 sectors. Here comes Evans now up across the line, and only 15.
Slower than Oliver Turvey's Neo, 333. What's Sam Bird going to do in the other Jaguar, the championship leader? He goes into 9th, so that's more encouraging. Just under 3 tenths away from Max Gunter. So that is a bit more like it. Rene Rast has done the fastest first sector of anyone. His middle sector is okay. Nick Cassidy has gone quicker than Gunter in sector 1. Here comes Rene Rast to the line now. And Lin goes up into 2nd. Rast goes up into 6th. So some interesting lap times coming in. Da Costa takes the checkered flag in 4th place. There's Blomqvist goes up into 7th position, just a 1/10 of a second away. This is absolutely remarkably close. Have we got every team within 2/10 of a second? I think we might have. I'm just trying to see if there's any outliers from that. Maybe Envision Virgin actually aren't within those 2/10. But you look at the tower on the left. I think Envision Virgin, and here comes Nick Cassidy. Is he going to change that? No, 1.4 seconds away. Lost a lot of time in the final sector, Nick Cassidy. Lost a 1.5 seconds, so he's obviously made a mistake.
Yeah,
the New Zealander.
His first 2 sectors were decent, though. You know, they were. Second sector was about half second now, but yeah, it is super close, as you said. Jack, you got 13 cars within. I think it's every. I think it's every team bar Virgin are within 3/10. Oh, and Dragon. Bar Virgin and Dragon, every team are within 3/10. That's unbelievable. Who's your money on, Nikki, after that one?
I'm excited to see what Oliver Rowland's going to do, because I think he sort of had the points taken away from him in the last outing in Rome. So he's out for a bit of redemption, I think, to try and prove himself once again and be fighting back at the top. Plus, he's in Group 2, which is always, I think, the group you really want to be in. Let's see what Jean-Eric Verne's face is like, because when he got out of the car earlier, he was not happy, despite finishing, I think it was P4 in the first session. Yeah, but his teammate was quickest, wasn't he? Yeah, that's true.
And actually, Da Costa quite a lot quicker than Verne today as well. 0.3 of a second, the gap between them. Da Costa in 4th on the left there, and Verne down in 15th position. Little stretch. There's a little nod to James Rossiter. Didn't look too dissatisfied.
It's his birthday tomorrow as well, so he'll be hoping for a double celebration.
Oh, it is. I forgot about that.
It is 31.
I wonder why they didn't do the practice start though.
Yeah, that's interesting. Both he and Da Costa came back into the pits without doing the practice start.
I think it's, yeah, I mean, I was saying at the end of FP1, I think it's massively important to start this weekend.
At least Oliver Turvey remembered this time.
Brutal.
Too soon?
Too soon. Hashtag too soon. But yeah, Turvey had that accident at the end of free practice 1 as the Dragon car. How much attention did you pay to where you would do your practice start from? Would you just do it from anywhere, or would you always pick pole? Or
no, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think, you know, because you don't know where you're going to qualify. So, yeah, you know, I think what you did always try and do is one start on the left and one start on the right of the grid. Yeah. Just to see if there was any difference. You know, at this circuit, I don't think it'll make a massive difference, because the exit, the chicane on the left-hand side of the track, and then they're driving diagonally across to the right. So actually, there isn't necessarily a cleaner side. It's, you know, the driver's going across the track at that point.
Robin Freitz had his lap time cancelled for track limits at turn 12, which is the sort of final corner on the track before the chicane. On board with Nick Cassidy here. Good start compared to Sergio Sedecamera on his left-hand side there. That wall squeezing in into turn 1 is going to be a bit of an interesting one, isn't it? It really sort of appears, doesn't it, as you get closer to the corner. But Nick Cassidy ending the session 24th quickest in the end after making a mistake in the final sector. Robin Freitz's teammate had his lap time deleted. The quickest driver in that session, Maximilian Gunter, the BMW I Andretti Motorsport driver, who has topped the pre-season test here twice in the past, Gunter. And he tops free practice 2 now as well. Can he do it when it matters? Alex Lynn, second quickest for Mahindra. Nick De Vries, third quickest for Mercedes EQ. Antonio Felix da Costa, meaning the top 4 are within a 1/10 of a second. Then you've got Roland Rast, Blomqvist, Buemi, Lotterer and Nato. The rest of the top 10, with Van Dorn and Jake Dennis completing the top 12. That's good news for Jake Dennis, only a couple of tenths away from his more experienced in terms of Formula E teammate Max Gunter. Sam Bird, 13th, within 0.3 of a second of pole, but it's looking like Jaguar aren't fully on it this weekend so far. Verline in 14th, Verne in 15th, And as I say, Robin Fry's got his lap time deleted. Nick Cassidy made a mistake. Mortara, I think, also got his lap time cancelled, and as a result is down in 23rd. Lucas de Grassi chatting to Marcus Mickelberger after he has returned to the pits. De Grassi down in 16th position, looking very sternly at the data there.
I really feel for Lucas de Grassi because he was having such a good race, you know, last time out, and then of course had issues with the drive shaft and lost the lead of the race. You know, he was looking good for his first win of the season, and we just haven't really seen de Grassi on top form for a while now. Also, of course, his sort of future at Formula E is unknown at the moment with Audi leaving, which must unsettle you a little bit coming into the season.
Yeah, de Grassi saying he'd like to stay in Formula E, but
where would Formula E be without Lucas de Grassi? It wouldn't be the same. He's been in it since before Formula E started, hasn't he?
He has. Yeah.
He was one of the first 5 employees, I believe.
Yeah. He drove that that little, what was it called, a Formula Lec or something in LA. They did a drive, didn't they? Back in before there was even a Formula E car. It must have been 13, early 13, I reckon. There's Da Costa jumping out of the car. And he's up there in 4th place. Quickest in practice 1, 4th in practice 2. He's looking quite hooked up. Stoffel van Dorn, the winner of the last race in Rome. 4th in the championship standings. Only 10 points behind Sam Bird. And I think we're going to get a real mix-up of the championship after these 2 races here, because it's going to be just a little bit easier for the front runners to hit the front. Don't forget you can get involved with Fan Boost. It's Nick de Vries. Turvey's still up there, loving this. Turvey in 4th place. Vote online at fiaformulae.com/fanboost. Were you a regular Fan Boost winner, Karun? I can't remember.
I can't remember. Probably not.
I think you probably remember if you were.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are the top 5 at the moment. Lucas de Grassi up there in 3rd in the Fan Boost standings, but the top 5 had a little bit of a gap to Nick de Vries in 6th position. Stoffel van Dorn, as ever, top of the Fan Boost. Very
what a smile!
driver.
What a smile from all those drivers.
Exactly.
Think how happy you'll make them.
So here's a look back at the second free practice session for the DHL Valencia E-Prix. The 2 Diesta cheaters, as ever, straight out on track at the head of the field. Jean-Eric Verne maybe struggling a little compared to his teammate Antonio Felix da Costa, because da Costa ended the session 4th quickest. Bit of action with Raston Verline. And then Mitch Evans getting a little out of shape. We saw a few drivers visiting the gravel at various times throughout the session, which could be something to look out for in qualifying. The 2 Mercedes EQs running line astern, the same with the 2 Nissan drivers as they were practicing a little bit of race running in the early stages. Antonio Felix da Costa coming through the cut through at 9 and 10. And then into the chicane, as I say, good enough for 4th quickest, but Max Gunter, despite this trip through the gravel, was one of the first drivers to go out and do a full power qualifying run. And he was the first driver to dip into the 1:26s, and it was a lap time that pretty much held once everybody else had changed their tyres and gone out onto the track as well to give it their best shot. Championship leader Sam Bird could only manage 13th quickest, 0.3 of a second away. And despite this lockup from Gunter, he said he was much happier with the balance, and he set the quickest time at 1:26.958 to go quickest of anyone in free practice 2. So, qualifying next up, and with pretty much all of the teams within about 0.3 of a second. In fact, in the top 14, there is no gap between 2 drivers bigger than 1/10 of a second. It's going to be a remarkable qualifying session this afternoon. Make sure you join us for it.